The Senator from Louisiana.
Mr. President, if I'm in order, I'd like to speak in strong support of my amendment number 1339, which will be voted on later on tonight.
The Senator is so entitled.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there's been a lot of discussion in this debate on the immigration bill about enforcement provisions. And there's been a lot of discussion.
For the 1339, as I understand from the clerk, is before the Senate, too. I thank the Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. And there's been a lot of discussion about triggers in this bill to ensure that enforcement actions are taken, are paid for, are enacted before other aspects of the bill, like the Z visa program, the temporary worker program, go into effect. My grave concern is that these triggers are wholly inadequate and really represent thinking that's backwards from where it needs to be. If you look at the triggers designed in the bill, they were arrived at, again, as I would put it, in a backwards fashion. The question was asked, well, it's going to take about 18 months to be ready to enact the other provisions of the bill. So what enforcement are we teed up to do during the next 18 months anyway? And we'll define that as the enforcement trigger for the bill. Well, Mr. President, I simply think that's the wrong way to arrive at a trigger. The key question has to be what needs to be done, what are the totality of significant measures that need to be done in order to have real enforcement at the border and real enforcement at the workplace. And let's make that totality the trigger in the bill. But of course the triggers are far, far less than that. One perfect example is the subject of this amendment. The U.S. visit program has been authorized since 1996, but is not near operational. This is the program that would establish an entry and exit system so we know absolutely who comes into the country on visas and when those people leave, if they leave on time under their visa or if they do not and are therefore overstaying their visa. Without such a system, we can't possibly know who is in the country and who has overstayed their visa. And, Mr. President, this is a very, very serious part of our illegal immigration problem. As of 2006, the illegal population, by most estimates, included 4 to 5.5 million overstays. And so visa overstays are a big, big part of this problem. We know from 9/11, visa overstays accounted for many of the terrorists at the center of the 9/11 plot. And so how can we have meaningful enforcement without this U.S. visit system, including the exit portion of this system? We can't. The simple answer is we can't. And so my amendment 1339 would include full implementation of this exit system of the U.S. visit program into the trigger of the bill. And therefore the other significant portions of the bill, like temporary workers, like Z visas, etc., can't take effect until the full trigger is pulled, including full implementation of the U.S. visit system. If we're serious about enforcement, we have to pass this amendment. If we're serious about enforcement, we have to recognize that 4 to 5.5 million illegals in this country are visa overstays, and we can't get our hands around that visa overstay problem without full implementation of this system, which has been authorized but nowhere near implemented since 1996. And so I urge all of my colleagues to come together and build up the trigger and enforcement provisions of this bill with the Vitter Amendment number 1339. With that, Mr. President, I yield back my time.
Mr. President, on the Vitter Amendment, let me just add some additional points to this debate and discussion. A great deal of time was spent listening to Secretary Chertoff to making recommendations about what is going to be in the national security interest to preserve our borders. That was one of the most important parts of the development of this legislation. And Senator Isaacson came forward with a very important suggestion and a proposal with regards to ensuring that we were going to have true national security, a protection of our national security before other provisions were going to be set forth. We've had good chances during the period of these past months to work with the Homeland Security and to work with all of the members of this body to ensure that we were going to have effective provisions that were going to protect the national security. We even accepted a Gregg amendment, which we believed added on to the provisions that were accepted. It is our belief, Mr. President, that those provisions are sufficient. The allocations of resources in the border, the utilization of enhanced border patrols, the enhanced border security, which have been outlined time and again during the course of this debate and discussion, and they are sufficient. So, Mr. President, I would hope that at the time that that amendment is addressed, that it would not be accepted. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Item Amendment 1339, offered by the Senator from Louisiana, Mr. Vitter.
Mr. President.
Seeks recognition. The Senator from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. President, this amendment is very simple and straightforward.
In order, the Senate will come to order. Will conversations in the well please be taken out of the chamber? Senator from Louisiana is recognized.
This amendment is very simple and straightforward. It would add to the enforcement trigger mechanism of the bill that the U.S. visit program be fully operational. This is the entry-exit system program that has been authorized since 1996 but has never been put in operation. Mr. President, as Senator Hutchinson just mentioned, we all know that a huge part of the illegal immigration problem is visa overstays. The latest estimate, 2006, is that 4 to 5.5 million visa overstays are illegal immigrants in this country. We cannot get a handle on that problem without the U.S. visit system to know when people are leaving the country and thus whether or not they're overstaying their visa. And yet that is not part of the enforcement mechanism of this bill at all.
Senator's time has expired.
Let's vote for this amendment and make it part of the trigger.
The Senator from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. President, there was no difference among all of us in trying to ensure that we were going to have a secure America. And we worked very closely with Secretary Chertoff. In this legislation, we've increased 27,000 detention beds, 20,000 border guards, 375 miles of fencing, 275 vehicle barriers, 70 ground-based radars and cameras, sensors, 4 unmanned aerial vehicles. And we accepted the Isaacson trigger, saying that the other aspects of this legislation will not go into effect until these are committed. Then we accepted the Gregg additions onto this, and we are in the process now of trying to negotiate with the administration to get mandatory spending to make sure all these are done and done expeditiously. The Secretary of Homeland Security thinks that we have met our responsibilities, and I would hope the amendment...
Senator's time has expired. The question is on the amendment. All in favor say aye. The ayes are 48, the nays are 49. The amendment is not agreed to.